You're listening to the Cash Podcast, creating affluence, success, and happiness with your financial surgeon, Adam Koch, President and Portfolio Manager at Libertas Wealth Management Group at libertaswealth.com.
Happy fall, everyone. I hope you've been taking some time to get outside, go for some nice, brisk evening walks, maybe even putting a fire in the backyard, enjoying a glass of your favorite beverage or whatever it might be. On today's episode, I wanted to reflect on the fact that we've had a higher than normal number of new clients coming into the office who have never ever had a financial plan. Maybe it's because of COVID and the fact that many people were laid off, changed jobs voluntarily, or because we lost family members, and that made us start thinking about being proactive and getting our retirement and or estate plan put together. But the bottom line is that we're seeing more and more people interested in either A, getting their first ever retirement, income, and estate matters in order, and or B, even a higher number of people who are asking for a second opinion just to make sure they're on the right track. So today, this episode is going to cross the span of time from younger people just getting started to business owners, pre-retirees planning those last 10 to 15 years before they make work optional, and those who are already retired today who just want to maintain their standard of living and never have to go back to work in retirement. But before we get started, as always, just a few housekeeping items. First off, thank you so much for joining us. My hope is for you to learn a little bit more on each and every one of these episodes so that you become more successful, wealthier, happier, and above all, more educated than you were before you started listening today. So come back often and subscribe. These episodes appear both on iTunes and YouTube. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Adam Koch and on Instagram at Financial Surgeon. Last but not least, all links, visuals, charts, and additional educational resources are always available on our website at libertaswealth.com. So let's go ahead and jump right into the material. I always start with a quote, and I think I've probably used this quote one other time in one of these podcasts a long time ago, and it goes like this. Real simple here. A dream without a plan is just a wish. And if you think about that, you can dream all day long, but if you don't have any kind of plan in place to make sure those dreams come to fruition, you're just hoping they happen or wishing they'll happen. So this is very applicable to the financial planning, retirement planning, and estate planning world, because really without a plan, anything that you want to do or that you would like to accomplish, whether that be quitting work at a certain age, whether that be selling your business for a certain amount of money, whether that be going on certain trips or hitting certain items on your bucket list. If that's you're somebody who's already retired and you don't want to spend your golden years at the Golden Arches, making sure you stay retired and continue to be able to take care of yourself and your family members, treat your kids and grandkids for dinner, whether that be once a week, once a month, or whenever you get to see them. So really, truly, this is such a great quote because, and we actually have it up on our wall here at the office, but a dream without a plan is just a wish. And that is so, so true. So the first group of people we're going to be talking about when it comes to planning is going to be those of us who have a lot of runway ahead of us. And when I say a lot of runway, what I mean is the younger generations. We're going to talk about the younger generation of people in their 20s, 30s, people who are just kind of getting started, and how to be one of the many, or I should say few, unfortunately. I was going to say many, but that wouldn't be true. How to be one of the few people, we hope there will be more, who start earlier in life and who end up becoming extremely successful and extremely wealthy later in life, not because they were rich, not because they were affluent, but because they just started planning early and started saving early. So the first thing you need to think about, if you're a young person, if you're in your 20s, coming out of college, if you've had a job for a few years, the first thing you want to do is just simply start early so you can spend guilt-free. And what I mean by that, I'm sure this is going to resonate with everyone who listens to this, or almost everyone, because most people don't start saving early enough. They just don't. And it's because we haven't been taught in high school, we haven't been taught in college. No one aside from maybe our own family members, or if we're in a business that really it pushes us or encourages us to save for ourselves, which most places don't, frankly, then most of us don't realize that, we need to start saving more than just 1% into our 401k plan, or we need to do more than just save whatever our match is. We don't want to just meet the matching contribution in our retirement plan at work. And when I say so you can spend guilt-free, this is what I mean when I say this is going to resonate with most of you out there. That is, once you get to a point where you know for a fact, you don't think you're saving enough, but you know for a fact that you are saving enough money right now to take care of yourself, your spouse, and your kids, and that you're not going to have to worry about retirement in the future and whether or not you're going to be able to quit working when you'd like to have the choice to. Then whenever you spend money, whether that be on an article of clothing that you want, whether that be on shoes, whether that be on an event like a concert or sporting tickets or traveling or going on a huge vacation you've always wanted to do, spending that money becomes guilt-free. You don't feel bad spending it because you've already done all the things that you need to be doing to pay yourself first. And I know we've all probably heard that saying before, pay yourself first, but that's what this is. It's starting as early as possible. And by the way, even if you're 50, that's not too late, but we'll get to that in a little bit here. But you want to start saving as early as possible, and you want to start saving as much as you possibly can. Well, how much? Well, first of all, let's talk about where we're saving. We want to be putting money into our 401k at work, our 403b at work if you're working for a nonprofit, our deferred comp plan if you're working for the state, let's just say. So there's all kinds of different types of retirement plans at work, and what you typically want to be doing is you want to be reducing your taxable income in most cases. I don't want to make this blanket advice because there are certain situations where maybe a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA makes sense, but in most cases, especially if you're single, you're going to be in a higher tax bracket, and thus it makes more sense to put money into a pre-tax retirement plan so as to reduce your taxable income and get that tax-deferred ongoing growth, compounding interest. So the first thing you want to do is you want to be putting money into that retirement plan at work. Second of all, you want to meet that match. Now, I mentioned that a second ago. You want to meet the match at minimum, but you don't want to stop there. You want to keep going if you can, especially when you're young. I think back to when I was in college, which feels like yesterday, but it was a long time ago. It was 21 years ago at this point. So I think back to when I was in college and how I was able to somehow make it through life on such a small amount of part-time income, and I don't know how I did it. And then all of a sudden we get out of college, we start making money. Yeah, our expenses go up, but at the end of the day, we start making more money than we ever have before in most cases, and then we have a tendency to spend a lot of it rather than starting to save right away. And that's almost it's not almost, it is the perfect time to start really putting money away early so that before we get used to all that money. So if you have that ability, or maybe even if you've been in the workforce for 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years, if you can get yourself to a point where you're putting more money away, and specifically getting up to where you're putting away 14 to 16% of your income, including your match, that's what you want to be doing. So first and foremost, if you've started, let's just say you don't have a retirement plan at all, start one, obviously. Second of all, get to that match. Third, you can increase it every year. You can increase it every time you get a raise. You can increase it every time you get a bonus or a commission check, let's just say, if you're in sales. And the goal is to get up to 14 to 16% for starters. And again, that 14 to 16% would include the match. And the reason I use 14 to 16% is because it's a rule of thumb. There is a rule of thumb out there that says that if you're putting away 14 to 16% of your income between now and when you quit working, you should be able to continue your standard of living. But this, again, assumes that you start relatively early. Now, what you really want to do at the end of the day, however, is you really want to get to the point where you're maxing out that 401k. And when you're younger, the maximum amount you can put into a 401k, this year anyhow, is $19,500. If you want to know what percent that is, then just take $19,500, divide it into your gross income, whatever your salary is, and that's the percentage that you would need to be putting away on January 1st throughout the rest of the year to make sure that you're maxing it out. And then always keep in mind that the match is on top of your contribution. So it's not that you have to put away 19.5 and then the match is included in that number. The match comes on top of that. Now, once you've gotten to the point where you're putting away the maximum into your retirement plan at work, again, this is blanket advice here, so this isn't the case for absolutely everyone, but for most people. Now you can start talking about looking at Roth IRAs or brokerage accounts, individual accounts, trust accounts, things of that nature. So moving on, we talked about the younger folks. Let's move on to pre-retirees. These are people who are, getting closer to retirement. They're in their maybe mid to late 40s, definitely their 50s, of course. It's nice to have a financial plan when you're young. I'm not saying that people who are young don't need a financial plan. Obviously, if you're a rock star and you want to really get started early, that's great. But it's nice to have a plan when you're young. It's crucial to have a financial plan when you hit your 40s. And by the time you're in your 50s, it's not too late to get a financial plan constructed. So I don't want to give off this impression that if you don't start in your 20s and 30s putting money in your retirement plan, and if you don't have a plan, a written comprehensive financial plan by the time you're in your 40s, that all is lost and you should just give up and throw your hands up. Instead, I want to say that by the time, if you're in your 50s, it's definitely not too late, because I believe that the last statistic I saw is the average person puts together a financial plan at 52. That's the average. But so you definitely want to make it a priority. If you're in your 50s, you're also going to be in a group of people between 50 and 65 years of age that have what we call a surplus gap. You've got this time in your life when, if you had kids, the kids are gone. Typically, they're out of the house, out of college. This 50 to 65 year range is going to be the point at which you have the highest amount of surplus earnings that you can be putting away for yourself. Now, whether you stay in your house, downsized, obviously that would create even more of a gap, a surplus gap for you to put away for yourself. But these are your highest saving years when you should be really trying to catch up if you feel like you're behind. Or if you're not behind, it's just a way to get ahead. And there's nothing wrong with getting ahead, obviously. Also, if you're over 50 years of age, I mentioned that $19,500 is the maximum contribution rate for a retirement plan, say 401k, for instance. If you're over 50 years of age, you can put away an additional $6,500 this year, and now all of a sudden you can put away up to $26,000 for yourself each year on a pre-tax or post-tax basis. Pre-tax being traditional 401k, or post-tax being Roth 401k, for instance. And this works the same with 403bs. Typically, they're pre-tax, deferred comps, all pre-tax. But point being, if you're over 50, you can put even more money away, which is great because you've got that surplus gap. And again, to reiterate, that the matching formula that you would be getting at work, if you have a match, would be on top of your contribution. And then the other thing you want to start thinking about when you hit your 50s is you want to start thinking about long-term care and long-term home health care. Not everybody wants to go into a long-term care facility or independent living facility down the road. Many people want to stay at home and have their care taken care of in their own home, which is not uncommon, obviously. So in your 50s, you want to start looking into not necessarily buying a long-term care insurance policy, because these days, most of the time, what we're looking at is not just buying a set it and forget it, use it or lose it long-term care policy. Instead, what we're looking at is a life insurance policy where if you don't use the long-term care insurance, your family gets the death benefit. If you need the long-term care insurance for at a nursing home or memory care facility or at home for home health care, you can use the death benefit and it gets accelerated while you're living, and you can use that for long-term care benefits. And then, of course, if at any point, I shouldn't say of course, but if at any point down the road you decide you do not want to have this anymore, let's just say, I don't know, you're 85 years of age, you still feel super sharp and healthy, you've got this long-term care policy and you'd rather spend the money, you can take the money out, less any fees, taxes, of course, but the cash inside the policy can be yours. So it's really a win-win-win when we're looking at these types of long-term care insurance policies, where instead of just paying for long-term care insurance and if you don't use it, you lose it, these what are called hybrid policies give us the ability to have long-term care insurance if we need it, a death benefit if we pass away and we never use it, so our family gets the money tax-free, and then we can always have a money-back guarantee, so to speak. So those are the things we want to think about in our 50s. Now, what if we're somebody who are in our, call it 50s, let's just say, and we feel like we haven't saved enough? Let's just say we're closing in on retirement. Maybe retirement is 1, 2, 3, 4 years away. It doesn't really make a difference. And you feel like you haven't saved enough. What do you do? Well, there's a few options. First of all, we can retire later. We can keep working. That's probably obvious. The second thing we could do, though, is we could change jobs. We can work part-time in retirement. Maybe our goal is just to get a job that provides for our healthcare needs so that we don't have to pay for independent healthcare costs, because it can be very expensive to pay for healthcare on your own. Maybe you just want to do something different and you don't need to have the full income that you're used to, but you need some income. This can help bridge the gap between, let's just say, 62 years of age and 65 years of age when you hit Medicare, where you've got some income, the employer is helping to pay for your health care costs, you don't have to pay for COBRA or you don't have to pay for independent health care, and you can get to 65 and now you're on Medicare. In some cases, maybe it's not Medicare we're concerned about, but maybe we want to put off taking Social Security. So instead of taking Social Security early, maybe we want to take it at full retirement age, which for most people is either 66 and a half up to about 67 years of age. We can work part-time doing something until we hit 67, or we can max out our Social Security by waiting until 70, assuming, of course, the job we have is something we really, really love and enjoy, of course. Third thing we can do is save more. I know it might not seem so obvious, but I think too many times people get stuck in a rut. They continue doing what they're used to, and they don't really think about the things we've already talked about so far today, which is putting more money into your retirement plans, whether that be a retirement plan at work, a Roth IRA, traditional IRA, or a brokerage account that can be spent at any time with no penalty, let's just say. So we can retire later, do part-time work in retirement. Before we fully retire, we can save more, and we can spend less. So that's the next thing we can do. So we can spend less money, look at our budget and see, while most of us don't like following a budget, of course, when you do retire, most people kind of have to look at things a little bit differently, because when you're working, you're used to getting a paycheck, you're used to just kind of spending money at will maybe, and you don't really worry too much about the checkbook or how much you have in the bank. Where in your retirement, you're going to have a fixed income. We hope we get raises through, say, Social Security or a pension if we're lucky enough to have a pension through, let's just say, the government or state, which can go up for inflation in the future. Obviously, this year we have a huge raise, relatively speaking, with Social Security going up 5.9% in December and January of this year. But we probably need to be looking at our budgets and making sure there isn't anything out there that we are wasting money on, or things that we're spending money on but we just don't use or we don't need. And then last, and this is really truly a last resort, while we often don't put inheritances in financial plans, there are certain situations where retiring later is not necessarily the best option, or maybe it isn't an option at all. Working part-time, being partially retired, if you will, isn't an option either. Saving more is impossible, and spending less, let's just say we've gotten our budget down so low, so whether there's really nothing more we can do with our budget to get it lower. As a last resort, if there's going to be an inheritance in your future at some point down the road, we can include that inheritance at a future date at a conservatively assumed amount in your financial plan to kind of show us, okay, maybe we haven't done the best job of savings for ourselves, but would this inheritance put us in a place where we're in good shape and we're going to be okay? So that's the last thing we would do. But again, that is a last resort. Switching gears here, I want to talk a little bit about entrepreneurs, business owners. Doing financial planning when you own a business, when you're a business owner, is a little different. The first thing right now, this year, current events, we don't want to miss out, if we're business owners, you don't want to miss out on the Employee Retention Tax Credit, or ERTC for short. I did an entire podcast on this back on July 8th. If you want to go to our YouTube or iTunes channel and check that out from beginning to end, July 8th, it's all about the Employee Retention Tax Credit and how business owners could, depending on what type of business you own, how many employees you have, your payroll, you could be saving tens of thousands of dollars right now. And obviously, if you don't know about this and if you don't implement these savings, you could be losing this money that is rightfully yours. So be sure to check that out, or shoot us an email, info@libertaswealth.com. Again, info@libertaswealth.com, and we'll fire you back some information, or hook you up with a CPA that can give you some more information on how to implement this within your business, or see if you qualify. Second thing, consider getting a business valuation. Even if you're a young business owner, and when I say young to me means as young as, say, early 50s. Most people who are business owners tend to be workaholics. Their business is their baby. They don't tend to imagine retiring until they're easily in their mid-60s. But I don't think it's ever a bad idea, to start treating your company like an investment that you'd like to sell someday at the highest possible value and the highest possible multiple. So if you're somebody who you'd like to sell in the next, call it 3 to 5 years, don't wait to start planning. Sooner is always better. And definitely don't let it be a fire sale for your spouse and your family to handle. What I mean by that is there's situations where, things happen to us. Our health, all of a sudden we can't work anymore. And now when word gets around or we have to sell it quickly, now the buying market knows we're going to be able to get this thing for a cheap price. And now you've discounted the value of your company for not only you, but for your family as well. So the sooner you can plan, even if you're not planning on selling for 15 years, the sooner you can plan, I think the better off that you're going to be. And then meanwhile, while you're still working, while you're still running your company, and maybe as part of this valuation process, be sure that you have the right retirement plan for your company based on the number of employees you have, the size of your company, your revenue. And it doesn't have to be a 401k necessarily. You might have a SEP IRA, or you might have a owner K, single person 401k. You might have a simple IRA, and there might be something out there that's just better for you. Or you might have a 401k, but perhaps if you haven't had it reviewed lately, like in the last couple of years, you might not know that there's things out there that are a whole lot better for you now than say 2 or 3 years ago. Changing gears here to talk about retirees now. So these are people who are already retired. We want to maintain our standard of living if we're retired, especially in such a crazy economy and a crazy market that we've become, I don't want to say accustomed to, but I don't think anybody's become accustomed to how crazy things have been lately. But we're worried, let's just say. I hear a lot about people being worried about government debt. People are worried about inflation. Yes, okay, Social Security is going up 5.9% this year into 2022, but that inflation is also up. The cost of going out to eat is higher than it was, much higher than it was 2-3 years ago even. So just because you're retired doesn't mean you don't need a retirement plan. And that's probably the biggest thing I want to share here is that I think many people think that, well, I'm already retired, I don't need a retirement plan. What you need is actually what's called a retirement income plan. Now, if you are somebody who is savvy, somebody who's done a lot of research, somebody who's had a lot of interviews with different types of financial professionals, when you hear the phrase retirement income plan, I want to emphasize this is not a plan that just shows you how an annuity can make you money every month. That's not what a retirement income plan is. What we want to do for retirees, the financial plan should be aimed at making sure we never have to go back to work, conservatively speaking. And then another risk for retirees is that this plan should include, how your safe money, which most people consider that their cash, their bonds, their CDs, or in other words, their fixed income sleeve of their portfolio, how that's invested. And it's really important to consider the fact that we're in an interest rate environment right now that is going through a bottoming process. It's very choppy. And for that reason, it's been extremely difficult to make money in bonds this past few years. So we're not talking about a retirement income plan that's here's the income you need, buy an annuity and spend your annuity money. That's not a comprehensive income plan. The income plan is much more comprehensive than that. It also includes estate planning. It also includes Social Security optimization. Unless you're already, of course, if you're already taking Social Security, that's a different story. But the best time to begin taking Social Security can depend on a lot of factors. It can depend on how much money you make now. It could be depend on whether or not you have a pension. It could depend on whether or not you're married or not. How much your pension is if you have one. If you're working part-time or not. How much money you've saved over the years and how big your nest egg is. All these things go into play, and what we can do is what-if analyses, where we can say, okay, if we take it at 62, 66, and 70, what are the differences, and how does that affect my retirement portfolio long term, with the goal, again, being to make sure we never, ever run out of money and have to go back to work in retirement. And then another consideration for retirees is, if you're somebody who has just done an unbelievable job of saving, and there's a lot of people out here like this, where you've just saved so well that there are lumps, or call it accounts, of money that you don't think you'll ever spend, just because your expenses are covered by, say, Social Security and a pension, or your expenses are covered because you've got Social Security and because you've saved so much money, and you've done such a great job at saving for yourself that you won't spend that money simply because you have so much. You might be taking, say, $35,000 per year in Social Security income. Your spouse may be getting $20,000, and so that's a total, obviously, of $55,000 in Social Security income. But maybe you're taking an additional, just to make numbers easy here, $45,000 per year from your retirement portfolio. But you have $2 million. or $3 million or something like that in total retirement savings. That means your withdrawal rate's 2.5%. Maybe it's 1% even, meaning that there's a big chunk of this money you're never going to need. There's things we can do from an estate planning standpoint to increase your net worth and protect your money, really both, and make sure that your heirs, your legacy is protected. And if you want to do anything when it comes to charitable planning, we can weave that into the plan as well. And that could turn into a whole new podcast, so I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much farther. But we there's different ways we can treat this. Like sometimes I'll just mention two things. Sometimes I'll tell people if there's a chunk of money we don't think we're ever going to spend because we just we don't need it, then why don't we start being more aggressive with that money and treating it as if it's our kids' money now. Same thing with a charity. If we're not gonna spend this money ever in our lives, let's be a little bit more aggressive with this money so we can grow it for that charity, or for our kids, so that it's worth more down the road as opposed to being super conservative with it. And then, like I mentioned, there's different investments out there that can protect your principal, and that are a little bit more conservative, but give you the opportunity to grow your money over time as well. And if you have questions about those, obviously we'd be happy to talk in more detail. Maybe I should do a podcast just about those things, but I probably will. But anyway, I digress. Okay, a couple other things to consider. One of the things we already talked about, and thinking current events right here, this isn't necessarily a current event, but always remember, again, I've already said it twice today, but your matching contribution in your retirement plan is on top of your contribution. So you can max out your 401k this year at $19,500 or $26,000 if you're over 50 years of age, and then your match is on top of that. So don't think that you have to squeeze that match into your contribution rate. Second thing that I'd be thinking about right now if I were you, even though rates have been choppy, like I mentioned earlier, making the bond market kind of a mess, I would take serious time at some point to look at your mortgage. If you're paying more than, let's just say, 3.5% on your mortgage, and especially if you plan on staying there for a while in the home that you're living in, I would be looking at having a professional review your mortgage. I've got somebody that I could introduce you to, a couple different people actually, if you'd like our recommendation. But bottom line is, back when our mortgages were in the 7% range, and people were saying, well, refinance if you can get 6, maybe it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But remember, the bigger the number, the smaller the percentage difference between 1%. Where now, let's just say if you're paying 4% on your mortgage today, and you can get that down to 3%, that's a 25% reduction in your mortgage interest. Doesn't seem like a lot, but when you think of it in fractions or in percentages, it's big. So keep that in mind as well right now. Interest rates, again, they're in the basement right now. I would consider, for any emergency money that you have sitting around that's used for a rainy day, as opposed to keeping it in a checking account or a savings account, look at something like Capital One 360's high interest bearing money market account, which isn't going to give you interest that you're going to want to run laps around the block about, but it's going to be a whole lot better than what you're getting on your checking or savings. And if you're a member of a credit union, if you're ex-military, there might be other options out there that would make more sense for you than Capital One. But Capital One 360 is one that we usually recommend that offers a high interest rate on a relative basis. Another thing that you can do, and I have to admit, I got this idea from a client years ago, a very intelligent client of ours. And the idea here, or the concept, is to turn your health savings account, if you have one, an HSA, into another tax-free retirement account for yourself. And this is how you do it. What you do is you keep track of all of your expenses, your healthcare expenses, and you pay for them not with the HSA card, but with your credit card. At the end of the year, you get your credit card statement. It's going to break down, your year-end statement's going to break down all of your expenses. You look for the healthcare expenses, and then you take all those expenses, you put them in a spreadsheet for that year, and now you have record of every single expense that you've had for that HSA, technically not the HSA, but for your health expenses from the credit card. So it's proof you spent the money, basically. Then you keep putting money into the HSA account. You allow it to grow. You can invest the HSA account, which means it can grow more. And then down the road, when you're 55, 60, doesn't really matter what age, and you no longer have a job, let's just say, in perfect scenario, you've retired, you're 65, you no longer have income, you're turning on Social Security, you've got Medicare. Now you have this big lump sum of money inside your HSA that you've never spent. because you've been paying for all your healthcare costs with a credit card, because you have record of all those expenses from back in the day over the years that you've kept track of, now you can take that money out of your HSA tax-free for anything you want. Because technically, you'd be taking it out to pay for or wash out those old healthcare expenses. Technically, that's what you're doing. But you have record of making those expenses, so therefore the money that comes out can be tax-free. And then now what you have is another Roth IRA, basically, except it's even better because Roth IRAs are after tax now and then never taxed again, whereas HSAs are pre-tax and then tax-free when you take the money out. So that's a really, really neat tip. And then last but not least, just making sure that your home and your home and auto insurance is up to date, that you're properly insured. You always want to make sure you have a liability umbrella policy on your home insurance that is equivalent to your net worth or more. If it's not very expensive to get an umbrella policy, but the probability of using it is very small. It's one of these really, really high risk but low probability insurability situations where, if you have a kid and they're driving your car and they get in a car accident and someone else gets injured in that accident or they die, if you have somebody on your property and they drown in your pool, if somebody falls on your front steps and they crack their skull, they're going to come after you. And even if it's your kid, they're not going to sue the kid, they're going to sue you. So the reason you want to have an umbrella policy is to cover you in the case that one of these low probability events that have a very, very high cost happen to you. And as the saying goes, we always think it'll never happen to us. But again, makes sense to pay the premium, have it covered so that worst case scenario, if it does happen to us, we don't have to worry about it. And then life insurance also. Life insurance is something that we continually see in our younger clients, people who are in their 30s, 40s, they have kids, and they're typically underinsured. Maybe they have insurance through work, but that's about it. And what we want to make sure is if something were to happen to either of the spouses, first and foremost, we want to make sure that the other spouse is okay. Second of all, we want to make sure that the kids are okay. Typically, college is taken care of. And then third, we just want to make sure that we have the proper amount of insurance to conservatively take care of that entire family for a prolonged period of time so that the financial plan doesn't blow up. We can put a financial plan in place that makes sure that everything's taken care of in your life, from your income, your savings, your retirement, your vacations, your college savings for your kids, your mortgage is taken care of, your estate plan's done, your tax situation's in wonderful shape, and then all of a sudden something unexpected happens and we lose, the person, our best friend, our spouse, and then all of a sudden the whole plan explodes in our face. And one of the ways that we can ruin our retirement plan is by not being properly insured. And this, again, happens typically in younger people, couples typically that have kids in their, again, 20s, 30s, and 40s. So I'll close up today with that being our last tip of the day. So that's it for today's show. Be sure to share this episode with your friends and family if you think that they would benefit. And if you'd like to discuss your personal financial situation further, remember, you never have to be a client to ask a question. So if you'd like to set up an intro call, email us at info@libertaswealth.com, or you can head over to our contact page at libertaswealth.com and you can contact us there. Be the first to watch and listen to these episodes by subscribing on both iTunes and YouTube. And don't forget, if you head over to libertaswealth.com, you can sign up to not only get these updates, but also all of our other screencasts, videos, and articles that we write delivered directly to your email inbox whenever they're released. Feel free to follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/LibertasWealth. I'm also on Twitter at Adam Koch, as well as Instagram at Financial Surgeon. And as I always say, there's thousands of podcasts out there, and you chose to give ours a listen today. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Cash Podcast with your financial surgeon, Adam Koch. To see any charts or images that were mentioned in this show, or to check out additional articles, videos, and other educational resources, head over to libertaswealth.com.